What's up, you guys? Welcome to my channel. My name is Yuri Choi, and I am a performance coach for entrepreneurs, leaders, and CEOs, and different kinds of high achievers. And today I wanted to share
What's up, you
seven
guys?
things that you
Welcome to
can
my channel.
say,
My name is
seven things that you can ask for consent or permission that'll make you a much more respectable and likable human and a communicator. These are missed opportunities. And also, this really just shows that you may or may not be an aware communicator. The number one thing that is attractive in humans is when somebody can be aware of what's going on, aware of where they're coming from, aware how they're being in relation to other people. And so, therefore, if you can master these seven questions in your everyday communication or just, when you're in interaction with others, I promise you'll become more respectable. You'll be a more conscious, powerful communicator. So, these are some of the things that I've shared with my clients as well. And if you guys have any more questions, let me know. But I'm really excited to get into this. Feel free to let me know which ones land for you. And yeah, I'm curious which one you start to utilize on a day-to-day basis so that it actually starts to make a difference in your life. Let's get into this right away. Number one. Oh my gosh. So this is shout out to one of my best friends, Christina. Her and I think we have some of the best communication when it comes to two best friends that can be conscious, that can really hold space, that can really like be there for each other in a very beautiful way. I'm so thankful for her. One thing we do really well, and obviously, we're both aware, gossiping or, these things are not of high vibration. It's not something that we do. However, there are times that we just want to vent just because we know at the end of the day, we're going to end up taking responsibility and we're going to take a look at it. But also, we just want to vent. So, this is good when you just want to vent. And we do this simultaneously to each other, for each other, and it's so powerful. So, instead of just dumping on each other, we often say, hey, do you have about 5 minutes for me to just vent right now? Or do you have about 10 minutes for me to vent right now? This has been so powerful for us because a few reasons. One, it's showing that you're aware, like you're going into your intention is to vent. You're just like dumping it out and you're not looking for advice. You're not looking to fix anything. You just want to like get it off your chest. And it's powerful to let the other person know that you're aware of that. That's where you're at so that you're not, unintentionally just dumping on them. I'm also offering her a limit. Like I'm saying 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm literally timing myself. So she also knows going into this, like if she were to say yes, she knows, okay, I'm just gonna hold space for 5 minutes. And then she can actually check in with herself and say, you know what? I do have 5 minutes for you to hold, for you to vent. Or maybe she doesn't. Maybe she had a rough day and maybe she doesn't have the emotional capacity or time to hold space for me. And the third thing is I'm offering her a moment to say yes or no. And I also am coming from a place of being hyper aware that either answer is okay. I'm not going to take it personally. So we have that unsaid agreement. So when venting, instead of just going into emotional dumping, you can say, hey, do you have about 5 to 10 minutes for me to just vent right now? Is that okay with you? So this is just so powerful, and I respect my friends so much for this, and hopefully vice versa, because we can really, one, invite ourselves into that conversation with the intention of, okay, I get to feel good about holding space for my best friend, but also they're offering me, time to either consent or not consent. And so, I once had a friend who would just call me like on the every other day and just go into venting mode for like 20, 30 minutes and then, hang up. And then not even ask me how I was doing, didn't ask me if I had the emotional capacity for me to like hold space for them. And they did this consistently for like 5 days. And finally, I had to say something. I was like, hey, listen, like this doesn't feel good. One, it's not really balanced. And two, I would really appreciate it if you would ask me for consent. And in that moment, I just realized like how appreciative I am for those people in my life who do this. It's really, really powerful. Number two, so I'm talking about, questions or consent related questions that you can ask other people so they can become a more powerful and conscious communicator and respectable human, likable human. Number two, do you mind if I offer advice on this? Would you like some advice on this? So I go into this with some of my clients, which is the difference between feminine and masculine communication. And there's like a whole field day I can have with this. But you can, there's two ways that one person can listen. This is also in my book, Creating Your Own Happiness. There's two ways that people can listen. One, an active listen. One is the feminine listening, which is kind of what we talked about in number one, which is like when people just want to vent, people just want to feel heard, people just want to be acknowledged, just like be seen in the sharing. And in that, you're not offering any advice. Now, there's the masculine way of active listening, which is when you listen with the intention to problem solve something or give them advice so that they can problem solve. Now, this happens in romantic relationships between masculine energy and feminine energy. Often I see, not necessarily even related to gender, although I would probably assume that men do more of this, masculine gendered men, which is, they want to problem solve. This is like in their biological nature. And as a woman, we appreciate that so much. However, sometimes we just want to just share, get things off our chest. So when somebody starts to offer advice on something that you didn't want advice on, it can feel almost like violating or just feel unheard, unseen. I have a lot of friends who are coaches and mentors of different sort. So this is something that, we're all typically sensitive about, not going into fix it mode. Because, some like on a psychological level, so subconscious level is what I'm trying to say. On a subconscious level, what that could actually indicate, especially if you're doing this as a habit or doing it unconsciously, is like you're almost communicating like, hey, something's wrong with you. Hey, you're not enough. When sometimes you just want a friend to just hold space and just nod and just feel with you and just, empathize, right? So that's a really powerful question to ask. Hey, do you mind if I offer advice on this? And then also be ready for both answers. Some people start to practice this, which I really acknowledge for. And then they are like almost asking just to like seem conscious, but they're not actually genuinely waiting for the answer. They're just like, hey, do you mind if I offer advice on this? Blah, 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 blah. And then they go into advice giving mode. That's also not helpful. If you're going to ask this question, you also get to really genuinely pause and say, and listen to them. Are they saying yes or are they saying no? I actually asked this question for one of my friends once, and she said, no, Yuri, I would really just love to vent. Is that okay? And I said, absolutely. Thank you so much for telling me. And so when you're asking these questions, you get to neutralize and not take it personally if they say yes or no. That is the active, conscious communication in this. Number three, hey, I have some information on this that I think might help, but before I share, can you share with me how much you already know? It's interesting because sometimes people start to share information that I'm like almost an expert in or I've written books about. And it's not that I don't want to hear, but in that moment, I can tell they're not really sharing to be helpful. They're sharing for their own significance, which isn't good or bad, but it may not be helpful. One thing that you can check in with people before you go into just, again, well, one, maybe it's good to just ask, like, would you like advice on this? That's the first step, but also exploring, hey, how much do you already know about this subject? So I don't go into something that you already know because we all know, we all been there when somebody starts to talk about something just because they just learned it and they're super excited, but you like, it's a topic that you know very well on. it just seems not very efficient. And then it can actually trigger this part of your brain that feels like almost torturous. So it's good to ask and explore, like, hey, how much do you know about this topic before I go into teacher mode, before I offer you advice? Number four, hey, would you be open for feedback on that, or would you like for me to listen? So this is something that we already touched on, but again, offering constructive feedback can be helpful as a friend. And though I guess a slightly different flavor than giving recommendations, like, hey, do you want feedback on that? So for example, if somebody's like, oh my God, I just wrote this amazing article, congratulate them, acknowledge them. Don't go into like, oh yeah, I did read that. I saw that you have five different grammar, problems. You like da 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 da. Like in that moment, you're going to probably not meet them at their excitement. And again, this could subconsciously actually communicate, hey, you're not enough. Hey, you're not perfect enough, right? Instead, pick a right time to offer feedback. And it may be seconds later, it may be minutes later, it might be days later, it might be weeks later. So, or it might be never. But also be mindful before you just blurt out feedback for people. Make sure that they're ready for it and make sure that you take a moment to really kind of digest, like, is this even helpful? I think that it's like a Jewish saying, when somebody's gotten a haircut, it's almost good to just not tell them if it's a bad haircut because it's like most of the time it's not fixable. Of course, maybe it is fixable. I think that particular, old Jewish saying is that if it's something that's not going to really be helpful, maybe it's okay to hold back on that feedback. I'm not saying like white lies. I guess I kind of am, but sometimes, one, it's just an opinion. It's your opinion that may or may not be wanted. And two, it may not even be helpful. So just check in with yourself and also check in with the other person before you offer constructive feedback. Even if you think it's really going to be helpful, just making sure consciously like that would be helpful. Number five, hey, would you be all right with me? Would you be okay with me sharing this information with so and so? Sometimes people will share something with you because they trust you and they value your safety. That doesn't necessarily mean that is public information. I have some rules around this. So for one, if, for example, if they shared something super publicly, like on, social media, that's like an open profile, or they talked about it on YouTube, I feel like that's information that's kind of like free to share. Or like if they share something in a group chat, then, reiterating that same information with another person might be okay. But like imagine, I had a situation where one of my good friends, her dad recently passed away. And I wanted to be supportive and I wanted to kind of, let some other friends know to be extra loving towards her. But also, I wasn't sure if this was information that she was comfortable sharing yet, or if I had the consent to share with other people. So even though I had good intention, which was genuinely that I wanted to kind of gather the tribe to like really pour her extra love and care for the next few weeks, I checked in with her. Hey, I just want to make sure before I share this with some of our, mutual friends, like, is this information I have your consent? I have your permission to share? She said yes, and that's when I started to share. So be mindful of that. Just because you have good intention doesn't necessarily mean that that's information that it's free to be shared. It's always good to check. I mean, if you're not sure, I think it's good to check, rather than, you know, be sorry later. Number six is about physical boundary. Hey, can I give you a hug? I think, on a day to day, like very, very light, innocent, like, hey, how are you? Touch can be okay. Depending on the relationship. But also, I think it's good to ask if you're going to be physically in their space or touching them of any way. You can ask them, hey, can I give you a hug? I think this became a little bit more acceptable during COVID times because, before I think there was less of this, but now, I mean, I found that during COVID, a lot of people were, asking for consent for a hug and stuff like that, which I thought was a good move. Even, when I go to my yoga class here, at Yoga Barn, we have these little consent cards. So typically, even though, in a lot of yoga classes, it's actually kind of like, mutually known that, yeah, yoga teachers might come and adjust you. We actually have these little cards that say, yes, you have my consent to, adjust me physically today, or no, please honor my space. And I think that's really powerful because at the end of the day, I'm a very like huggy like person. I love physical touch, but there are days, I'm not gonna lie, where I just don't want to be touched. And that's totally okay. Or maybe you're the type of person who doesn't really enjoy physical touch for different reasons. You're, you're able to honor that. And we get to also honor that in other people by asking for consent, asking for the permission to touch them. Number 7, um, this I think it's rather a kind of a renegotiating an agreement. I'd like to think that every word that we say out loud is an agreement, typically, especially if we're making plans with other people. And this is a whole different thing that we can probably have a whole different video on. But this is about renegotiating agreements. Like if you make plans with somebody, it's good to one, acknowledge, hey, I know that we said we would meet at, 7 p.m. at this location. That itself is powerful because you're not just saying, hey, I don't remember, or that didn't matter. You're saying, hey, I acknowledge that we made that conscious agreement. And then you can say, hey, would it be a possibility for us to reschedule and then offer a different time and date? So this is better than, hey, I can't come or just not communicating at all. This is a very conscious way to say, asking for consent to renegotiate that agreement that you made with that person, and also very much acknowledging your word. Um, I go into this with my clients. There's a difference between like renegotiating your words or like honoring your word and keeping your word. Keeping your word would be, hey, this is our plan. I'll see you there. Honoring our word would be, hey, I acknowledge at least that we made these plans. Would it be a possibility for us to, renegotiate that time and that agreement? Then you're not keeping your word, but you are honoring your word, which is still literally honorable, which keeps you integrous. And integrity is a very respectable and likable trait in many humans. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. I mean, if you can master these 7 permission questions, I can guarantee you will be more of a conscious communicator. People will respect you more. You will seem, and you will be more self-aware. You're not just like seeming aware, you're actually more aware because you're acknowledging these moments where you're not assuming anything. You're aware of certain things and how you might impact, and you're actually asking for consent before barging into something, like barging into physical touch or just assuming certain things. So um, I think this is really powerful. Let me know what you guys think. Which one's your favorite? And by the way, if you are looking to go deeper into this, I will be starting a group coaching program called Rebirth, an activation into an abundant, powerful mindset. And I've worked with many high achievers and CEOs and leaders of different sorts. And I'm going to be bringing a lot of these tools. And, one thing I found is by tapping into and staying in the abundant mindset, which by the way takes a lot of different things on the back end. So anything from, good habits to, being emotionally intelligent, having, integrity, all these things I typically cover with all my clients. We're going to go over all of those things work together to really not only create, but stay in that abundant mindset, which is typically very magnetic, which can really help you create the reality that you would desire. So anyways, if you're interested in that and or curious about my one-on-one VIP coaching, feel free to find the link below to either message me on Instagram or feel free to book a short consult and I'd be happy to speak with you. Other than that, I'm curious which one landed for you the most. I'm so excited to hear your feedback. And other than that, again, my name is Yuri